You've hit play on the Screen Companion, an eclectic mix of film and TV recommendations.
Uplifting endings. I thought of this theme because so often dramas send us into a tailspin, and you just don't know if they're ever going to pull out of it before the end of the movie. It's one of the reasons I don't like to revisit Requiem for a Dream. It's such a downer movie, and it stays down all the way through.
Probably will never watch that one again.
And I'm a Jennifer Connelly fan, but it's not my favorite character she's ever played.
Yeah.
You and I are here to discuss Lars and the Real Girl from 2007, and don't worry, he won't get far on foot, from 2018. I understand why they use that title. It's referencing something in the story, but what a terrible title.
Yeah.
From here on out, I'm just going to call it Don't Worry.
That's fair.
So if you will, Andrew, give us a description of Lars and the Real Girl.
The main character is Lars. It's his story where he orders a realistic sex doll offline and treats it as if it's a real person, talks to it, takes care of it, and introduces her to everyone as a real person. And psychologist slash medical doctor does some sessions with him incognito, and we find out why and his relationship with the doll as the movie progresses.
Do you think they reverse engineered it and had it take place in a small town because they figured if they set it in a big city, none of the supporting characters would have been as supportive about Lars's delusion?
Definitely, yeah. This wouldn't work as a city movie because either people wouldn't tolerate it or people just wouldn't care and they wouldn't go along with it.
I understand that argument, but I could also flip it because I've had some experience in small towns. People tend to be much more reserved and conservative. If you set this, for instance, in San Francisco, I bet you there are plenty of artsy people there that wouldn't mind Lars hanging out with a plastic woman at all.
I think you're right about that, but I feel like you're talking about neighborhoods at that point, not like the whole city.
Yeah, that's true. Ryan Gosling plays Lars. I've done Drive on this show. You and I have done La La Land. What stood out about his acting in this movie for you?
He gained weight for the role. He does tend to play these neurotic characters. This one is more definitely he's playing someone who's not just kind of quirky and weird, but someone who's clearly not all there. But he's still charming because he's Ryan Gosling.
Has he done any other grounded domestic dramas?
I haven't seen it, but I think that movie Half Nelson, it was like his first Oscar nomination. I think he played druggy. He did a movie with Anthony Hopkins a while ago, which I don't think anyone saw. It looked interesting.
Is this him at his most dumpy?
Definitely.
What a great transformation when you look at the rest of his career, that you see him as Lars, and then he would be in Drive. Blade Runner 2049, he plays some badass characters. Really, Lars? He turned into those guys?
He has a very interesting career. If I saw Lars and the Real Girl before I saw Drive, he's not going to be able to pull this off. This is weird. He's not an action guy, but I think it helped that I saw Drive before I saw Lars and the Real Girl. Because then I thought, oh, this guy has some range. Like, he could play quirky characters. I think Drive he's an odd duck in that movie, but not as odd as Lars. So I think the transition would have been smoother for me.
I saw it in the same order as well. And what is it about accepting actors that you see in stronger roles to step down a notch than it is like back in the day, the Batman controversy where Michael Keaton, comedy guy, gets moved up to action guy? Why do you think we accept it more when they step down?
Maybe it's because we do see them in a more serious role, and I think maybe we associate people who can do serious roles with people who can do any role. Because it's like, oh, look at the high drama they're doing. They can do anything, you know? But when a comedic actor does drama, a pleasant surprise usually that they're good at it. But I also think that's really unfair because look at Robin Williams' career. Even Danny DeVito can be a really serious actor sometimes. And look at his filmography, too. Comedic actors can easily do the switch to something serious, but I think we just take dramatic actors more seriously still.
Give us a piece of your mind, your favorite guest, what you think we got right, what you think we got wrong, and what we should discuss next via the screencompanion@gmail.com, or comment on YouTube, or join the Facebook group. Further support the host by purchasing his book, Traversal, The Weight of Worlds, available on Amazon.com. After being reminded of Gosling's range, I think he suffers from the Tom Cruise syndrome. Gosling's got acting chops, but Hollywood wants him to be Ken.
Oh, I still haven't seen that either.
Neither have I, but they did a lot of marketing for it, didn't they?
They did, yeah. It's now like Warner Brothers' top grossing movie of all time. I know it beat The Dark Knight at this point.
Yeah, it's a monster. I don't know if this is a sign of the coming apocalypse. I just can't wrap my head around it.
I'll see it when it hits free streaming. But I'm going to watch it for Gosling.
Lars and the Real Girl, do you think it leans closer to a straight drama, or do you think it's more fanciful like a French movie?
For the most part, it's more fanciful, but I think his doctor's appointments are definitely more serious. Because the whole idea that this small town is going along with his delusions, that's where this big quirky element comes in, and the real Bianca, the doll, people take her out for stuff. One person's using her as a mannequin, but it's like, oh, she can model clothes for us, what I'm assuming. So it's this whole thing where the town gets involved. You have that scene where Lars is upset about it. This is a man with a delusion, and then that one lady's just like, you don't talk to a woman like that. What are you doing, Lars? She's a lady with her own life. It's very quirky.
At first, it was heartwarming to see the town rally around Lars and help him through his issues. But then you got that moment you mentioned, and a lot more moments where people in the town, they've gotten in on the delusion as well. Like, at a certain point, I don't really feel like the supporting characters are treating Bianca as real for Lars. Now they're just treating her as a real person for themselves.
They were definitely using her for their own gains. I think the hairstylist used her as like a model or like a test doll or something. They definitely took advantage of the situation and played within the delusion.
Now, this was coming from Lars, so it might have been him feeding the delusion, but he does say at one point that she's been elected to the school board. Did you catch that?
I did, yeah.
I really hope that's not true, because that's so silly.
It is. The movie has its silly moments. It's a good one, though. I liked it.
And what did you think when they had the funeral for Bianca? I know it was going for heartfelt and sweet, but all I saw was a culmination of their shared delusion. I just didn't have anything to feel for it during that scene. What did you get from it?
I saw it as like that small town rallying around Lars. Clearly he's not well, and everyone likes him. So I just kind of thought they went to it, and to show their support. Of course, that girl in the back is there because she's trying to get at Lars this whole movie.
Margot.
Yeah, Margot was just glad Bianca was finally dead. She did not wait. I don't want to say a shared delusion. I think they went along with it. I don't think they were also thinking of Bianca as real. I think they were just all doing it for Lars's benefit. Okay, Lars, yeah, she's buried, but she loved you the most. You know what I mean?
But what about that scene when supposedly Bianca's having a health issue and they call 911? And you see the paramedics put her on a stretcher and roll her into the ER. Come on.
I know, but you call an ambulance, if you have the insurance, they'll pay for it. They're billing Lars.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. So the heart of the movie, I would say, is Lars and Bianca. They are the stars, and they're on the poster together. Do you entirely buy the setup of that relationship?
I do, yeah.
What do you think was actually the catalyst for him buying a sex doll?
Probably the culmination of the loneliness that he has. I think there was a lot of fear for his sister-in-law that she would die in childbirth, so I think he needed something to cope with that she would die. It was something or someone that he could touch or be physically close with, where it doesn't feel like it burns him when someone touches him.
She's just always trying to hug everybody. You know, some people don't like that. Some people don't like to be hugged. But she doesn't realize that. She takes it personally and thinks, it hurts her feelings. I don't know what to do about that. Do you?
But it's such a comfort sometimes just to have somebody's arms around you, don't you think?
No.
Come on, it feels good.
It does not feel good. It hurts.
Like a cut or a bruise?
Like a burn. Like when you go outside and your feet freeze and then you come back in and they thaw out. It's like that. It's almost exactly like that.
Same with everybody?
Well, not really with Bianca. But everyone else.
Do you think he truly saw Bianca as being real, or was she a toy that he wouldn't admit to anyone else that she wasn't real?
I tend to think that he believes she was real, because that's essentially the premise of the movie. I have seen this like mid-2000s or something documentary that BBC did. I think it's called Guys and Dolls. And it followed 4 dudes who bought specifically these real girl sex dolls. And it was like 4 different relationships that they had or associations with the dolls. There was one person, I wish I remember his name. He has a real doll. As far as they can be, I think they're legally married at this point. He treats it like a person. He does everything with this doll. The delusion is real for him. That's why I think, he thinks she's real.
And you mentioned Lars' sister-in-law. Besides her, we've got Gus, his older brother. You yourself, you have an older brother. Do you think the relationship between Lars and Gus might be the strongest pairing in the movie?
It is a good pairing. I wish they went into what the age gap was, because it seems like they were pretty far apart. Because if he was old enough to leave, because it sounds like he left while Lars was still in his pretty young years. So I wish they went into that. If they did, I missed it. But they did have a good relationship where you can tell this older brother, he's just trying to avoid it because I think they had issues with their father. I think the sister-in-law also had a good dynamic too, where she was just that female character who cares too much, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I thought the best emotional moment was when Gus confessed to his wife that he felt guilty about leaving Lars to live with their father. But then he has a similar moment where he says just about the same thing to Lars in the basement later in the movie. When that second moment happened, did you feel the emotion was undercut by the fact that he had already revealed it in an earlier scene to his wife?
Yeah, it wasn't as strong as the earlier scene. But it kind of makes sense to me because I think at that point it would have been more he has come to terms with it more, he's apologizing, he knows he goofed, versus with his wife where he's kind of yeah, I'm pretty sure I goofed. Kind of like a coming to terms with it thing. So it would make sense that it wouldn't be as strong. And plus, I don't think it helped that Lars was kind of yeah, it's okay. He was kind of, it's fine,
That's not the most satisfying ending to a scene for somebody to just say, yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, but that's how he did it.
What do you think is the biggest barrier for a would-be viewer to dial into this movie?
I think it would be the town going along with it. Because to me, at some points, it was just a little bit of a stretch, but I think that's what you can do in these small town set movies. You can have everyone knows each other, everyone knows each other's business, they can rally around.
I would have loved some sort of villain character just to add some conflict to this.
The delusion is the conflict. Do you need someone calling Lars a loser? I mean, Eric was kind of there for a little bit. I think Margot's the real villain of the movie, honestly. Waiting.
I could see that.
Waiting in the wings the whole time. Not taking a hint at the beginning. Waiting till he's weak and vulnerable and sad at the end.
And then he becomes complicit in it after Bianca's entered the scene at the bowling alley between Margot and Lars. And he reiterates to her that, I'm a one-woman guy, I'm already with Bianca, so I don't want you to get the wrong idea about us hanging out. But it feels like both of them understand that that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And isn't it a little messed up that the resolution involves Bianca getting sick and dying? Like, that's the way Lars needs to get out of his delusion?
It does make sense that that's how it has to go. I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, you could just have it like, oh, hey, oh, I've been talking to a doll this whole time. You could just have that realization, but it's not as dramatic. Her getting sick and dying is kind of like the ringer that he put himself through, essentially. The ringer that he had to go through to get over his issues, or at least acknowledge them and come to terms with things.
But it all happens on his schedule. And every town, even a small town, has a punk, Andrew. I want the town punk to be the bad guy. Get me Anthony Michael Hall from Edward Scissorhands, and I want a scene where he tries to light Bianca on fire.
Gosh. What was the name of that? Who played Ralph Fargus from Christmas Story? Get that guy.
Oh, yeah. But just somebody to challenge Lars a bit more, because everybody's treating him with such kid gloves. It might be healthier that way for the character if this was really happening. But as a viewer, like, I'm starting to do this 50-minute check, where 50 minutes into a movie, especially for this show, I ask myself, what's driving the story? What do I care about? What do the storytellers want me to care about? And in Lars and the Real Girl, I had trouble figuring out what exactly the story was doing almost an hour in. So Lars and the sex doll girlfriend, they're a great springboard, but is it just that we want to know how the relationship resolves itself? It's like the premise is a bowl of pasta and it's missing the meatballs and sauce that you would get from conflict or twists.
All the conflict is internal for Lars. And just the scenes with the psychologist kind of saying, like, of the delusion, he's working something out. We just gotta see how it goes. Because his brother at the beginning of the movie was not really supportive. And he did try to just tell Lars, like, hey, look, she's not real. She's just, she's plastic. Like, what are you doing? Lars, out of hand, ignored him. It didn't even register. So, the town punk, if there was one, I think he would have to light Bianca on fire, but then we're dealing with, like, a murder. That could be even more traumatizing for the poor guy, and just not funny anymore. That's not cute.
Well, see, now I'm thinking of a scene where they arrest the town punk, and he's like, guys, don't you think this is taking it a bit far? And then they actually hold a trial.
Okay, so now I'm back in.
I don't think the movie is straight enough that we can't have more fun with it, because at the end of the day, they do get very whimsical with it. You could also do where maybe Lars kicks it into overdrive and he says, guys, I'm a church-going man, but I need to tell you something. Bianca, she's pregnant!
Oh my gosh.
But what was your favorite scene?
I think when we learned about his aversion to touch, just how he's sitting there and, he's like, oh, I can take it. It burns a little bit. And then when she goes to touch his neck, he just freaks out. I like the psychology scenes a lot with the therapy sessions. I thought they were really good. The doctor was chill about everything, making it, of course, look like, yeah, you're in control, Lars. We'll talk about what you want to talk about. There's no official diagnosis, which I think is also nice and wholesome. And they had a good chemistry on screen. They just work well together.
As far as setting up a character and their hang-ups, it struck me how strong the first 10-15 minutes are in showcasing Gosling's ability to play disturbed. And it reminded me of a Ricky Gervais comedy, the amount of painful awkwardness between Lars and his family and co-workers. Gosling is a master fidgeter.
He is. Oh, he's great at it.
So, since this episode is about uplifting endings, do you think it succeeded with its positive ending? Do you feel like they should have pulled back or maybe added more to it?
I think it succeeded. It's bittersweet, but it is a successful ending because the delusion is over. Lars is on a road to recovery. And even though Margot was waiting in the wings the whole time, we kind of knew that was Endgame. And now they have a date. It was a nice ending.
I wanted something to show Lars understood that the months he spent with Bianca were nuts. It ends pretty abruptly in that final moment. All they needed to do was, as he's talking to Margot, just show him pop the cap off of a pill bottle and just take something for his delusions.
No, I don't like the medicine route. Medicine ending is bad ending.
The way the movie ends, I'm not sure he'll ever look back on the relationship for what it was. I'm worried the next time he has a problem, he'll send away for another plastic girlfriend.
Maybe there will be a sequel.
This movie tanked at the box office. I'm really glad that it didn't do well enough for a sequel, because then you could have Lars and the real daughter, where his wife, Margot, can't conceive, so he goes into another delusion, this time with a Cabbage Patch Kid.
Oh, that'd be terrible.
I just want a little more resolution to his deep root, because you have to go off the deep end to have an episode like Lars does in this movie. I don't really get the sense that he's truly moved past this and that it won't happen again.
I mean, it might, but that's, maybe they should have done it as a series, and then season 2 could be the next illusion.
It does treat it rather lightly, all the ways a delusion would manifest and how people would react and how Lars would act in the delusion. In that regard, this movie feels very Hollywood. Because then you could go the other route and take it to a What About Bob level, and Lars hurts himself and others.
I haven't seen that movie in so long.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either, but I just remember Bill Murray being a psycho.
Oh. Well, only to Richard Dreyfuss, though, that's the thing. Everyone loved him. Everyone loved Bob, except his own shrink.
But moving on to Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot. A movie about an alcoholic named John Callahan who gets into a drunken car accident that leaves him without feeling below his chest, confining him to a wheelchair. The rest of the movie follows him on a journey of self-discovery where he deals with feelings of abandonment and alienation from growing up as an adopted child. Andrew, forget for a moment that it's based on a memoir. Would the story have been better set in present day instead of the 70s and 80s?
I don't know. I can't think of a way where it would be poignant if it was in modern day. With modern day, the comics, they wouldn't be like really deemed offensive or as offensive as they were back in the 70s.
The cartoons that Callahan draws after his accident?
Shock humor is pretty tame by our standards today. The one with the KKK people coming out and like, oh, I like it when the sheets are fresh out of the dryer. I can see where that would be a huge controversy back then, and I don't think it would really matter today. It made sense for it to take place when it actually did take place, you know what I mean?
I think setting it present day might actually be worse, because the flagrant alcoholism on Callahan's part, I think that would be harder to swallow. I imagine more people around him would want to address the issue before it got too far. I just imagine alcoholism being more acceptable back in the 70s. Less people would talk about it with you.
That's true, but I also think it just depends on the circle he runs in.
On the night that he gets into the wreck, he goes out on a bender with Jack Black. Was this the first time you saw the movie?
Yes.
It's weird. If you see a movie a couple times, the things you'll notice. And what bugged me this go was how many famous people are in this movie. In every minor role.
Yeah, because Jack Black's not... It doesn't have to be him. That's the thing.
And he was good, but it's distracting. It's Jack Black.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things with these movies, especially when it's centered around one person for most of the whole thing. If you look at the poster, Jack Black's name is on the top billing, but like he's in it in just a handful of scenes.
Oh, that's gross. I didn't notice that. I hate when they do that.
He's one of the big guys. They could have gotten someone else for his role. They could have gotten someone else, I think, for Rooney Mara's role, because she wasn't in it a whole lot. But isn't this the movie where Rooney and Joaquin started going out, though? So, there we go.
Aw, romance. Other people that show up in this movie, a member of Slater-Kinney plays a social worker. Heather Matarazzo shows up at one point. Jonah Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Driving to see gymnasts in the park.
Maybe they're preparing for the Olympics next year.
I'm serious. I've been seeing them since my physical recovery.
Maybe they're manifestations of your sobriety. We first saw them in the emergency ward. Maybe they're sticking around to get what they want.
Well, what do they want?
For you to come with them?
Because they're waving to me, you know?
It's the big park in the sky. It could be calling from the other side.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. I don't want to go to the park in the sky.
Callahan, don't obsess over the gymnasts. Go to meetings, don't drink, read the book. That's all you have to focus on. And you have to work on the second step. Like, you have to believe that a power greater than yourself can restore you to sanity.
Yeah, I know.
And besides, how are you going to do gymnastics anyway, Callahan?
They were all fine. They all acted well, but it started to feel like Gus Van Sant just looked at his contacts in his phone and called people up and said, hey, you want to be in my movie? All his Hollywood friends.
This is Good Will Hunting, you know?
This wouldn't be such a bad pairing with Good Will Hunting.
It wouldn't. I don't want to say they're the same vein, but its character gets put through the ringer, come out the other side. Good movie also.
Well, I could see Robin Williams playing the Jonah Hill part.
Oh, yeah.
Don't Worry doesn't have a best friend character, so Ben Affleck couldn't come into this movie.
He could be Jack Black's role.
Oh, yeah. Especially with his history of alcoholism, he could do that very well. Compared to other wheelchair-bound dramas like My Left Foot and Born on the 4th of July, do you think this movie does things any differently?
Can I just go on the record and say that I really think wheelchair-bound dramas is kind of problematic?
It's a subgenre I didn't know existed, but I like it.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean, though.
I didn't make the movies.
You didn't. I haven't seen My Left Foot, but I know of it. I don't know if there was a whole lot of laughs in that movie.
Not that many.
But what this one did differently is there's a pretty good dramedy element to it. Not the subject matter, but the subject itself, the person that it's based on. You know, he's a cartoonist and he did these funny drawings, and of course he's going to kind of have that outlook on life. They added humor to it in a way that you probably wouldn't laugh at a lot of things. At the beginning of the movie, at one point, Joaquin's like scooting down the sidewalk, and he's about to go down curb and cross the street, but like the wheel gets caught on something, he just flies out and takes the header onto the pavement. It's kind of funny. And then these neighbor kids come to rescue him. But I felt like that was the moment where you're supposed to uncomfortably chuckle. It had a lot of humor to it. Like Jonah Hill's character, you can tell why he was cast. It's like, oh, we need someone who's going to bring a couple good jokes and a lot of F-bombs, and let's get Jonah Hill. So there you go.
Also considering his filmography, there's some meta humor that he would be a sponsor.
Oh yeah, this is like after Wolf of Wall Street by a few years, right?
Yeah. I like how, because of the jumping back and forth in Callahan's life, we see his highs and lows distributed throughout the movie, and it's more dynamic through the non-linearity. In other movies, it's a classic dramatic sequence. Once Ron Kovic gets shot in Vietnam, you're not going to see him walk again. When he gets depressed about being in a wheelchair, you know there's at least another 10, 20 minutes before he's going to smile again.
True.
With Don't Worry, one moment he's happy with his girlfriend, then it could cut to a hard admission at an AA meeting. The peaks and valleys are spiky instead of smooth curves up and down. Did it occur to you that the opening moments involving Callahan meeting that group of skateboarding kids and they help him into his wheelchair, because the movie jumps around so much in time and has such great transitions, that scene is really the whole framing device for the rest of the movie? I guess he was telling the kids about his life the whole time?
Yeah, I did like that jump back to it where it's like, oh, he was just telling the kids these stories and they're going to go to a skate park. That was nice.
What do you think is the most depressing moment in this movie?
Much like Born on the 4th of July, it's when he's in the hospital and they have him on the bed where they're rotating him. That's kind of the hardest stuff to watch.
A lot of movies would have him get into the car wreck, become paralyzed. That is rock bottom, and that's when the main character is going to say, I'm going to put down the bottle, I'm going to go join a program. The fact that this movie spends half its runtime getting to that point where he's hit rock bottom, or at least he thinks he has, for me it's when he's left alone with a bottle of wine and he can't stand not being able to open it. You're already in the wheelchair, dude. Maybe you should stop caring about getting your next drink.
He wheels around a little bit, and then on the top shelf there's a vodka bottle, and he's just staring at it, and you're like, you're not going to get that. That, to me, was, I guess, the other rock bottom moment, but there was still a level of levity to it, whereas the hospital stuff was pretty humorless.
When he knocks over the rat tank, were you happy that the rat wasn't harmed?
I was happy, yes.
That would have been just another knife to the gut if in the next moment we see that he killed the rat.
I was expecting him to start wheeling around for it, and then as you hear his wheelchair, then you just hear like a wee, and like he just ran it over.
I think that moment could have worked in this movie. I don't think that would have been too far.
It would have been in place, but that would have been a little sad.
What was your favorite scene?
The scenes where he's working on his cartoons. When he started getting the publishing, you see the stacks where it's like funny, not funny, needs work. He's getting his comics out there and rediscovering his purpose.
My favorite scene involves my favorite character, who is Tim, the attendant. There's a scene where Callahan is at group with Donnie, played by Jonah Hill. And they're getting to the root of his alcoholism, and he's pouring his heart out. And if you notice in that scene, in the reverse shot where we're looking at the other members of the group listening to him, Tim, the attendant, is in the background sleeping. He's not an asshole, but there are moments that make him seem insensitive. But then when you realize that his job is to wash a man and get his groceries for him and be his nurse.
You gotta take those naps where you can get them.
Is there anything more you'd like to see in the ending that they didn't do?
For good or bad, it didn't really leave me wanting more. I think I would have liked to see more progression of his cartoonist career. Because I don't feel like the movie went into the heights that he seems to have reached when they made a movie about him. It felt like they kind of just went into the basics.
It showed him giving a TED Talk.
Yeah, but is that really the peak?
Maybe not. But unless you're Davis, who created Garfield, or Stan Lee at Marvel, I don't know what other plateau you could hit. What's above that?
That's true.
I would say he accomplished quite a lot, considering he barely had use of his hands.
Because there's like book deals and stuff. TED Talks? Everyone gives TED Talks, dude. It's just like, I'm not impressed with a TED Talk as like a career achievement.
About some of the dumbest subjects, too.
Yeah, there's just too much. So it's kind of like, no.
How about a scene with Callahan leading an AA group of his own, like he had mentioned to Donnie? Not exactly to complete the circle, but deal with people coming to him with their problems, since all the movie is him going to others for help.
It would have been nice. If he did that in real life, great, but I wouldn't want them to add it in there just to make it a dramatic addition, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. I would be okay if they changed the names and just said inspired by a true story.
I guess I just don't like it if it strays too far.
It is cool, though, that considering all the trouble this guy had in his life, in one scene after the accident, he's thinking, what am I going to do now? Like you have in a lot of these movies where people go through some terrible tragedy that affects them forever. And out of all the things the doctor could tell him, I don't think you're going to be a successful cartoonist one day would have been one of them. And the fact that it really happened to this real guy, that's pretty cool.
I'm on his Wikipedia. It looks like he was also a songwriter. He released an album.
They do mention him being a songwriter in the movie, but I thought he was bullshitting.
Yeah, I mean, but that was like at the very, very beginning. He was a songwriter, like that was his job. And then he just goes out and gets wasted and everything. I mean, goodness gracious. He wrote an album. He played the harmonica and ukulele. That's crazy.
Before the accident.
No, this was released in 2006.
Wow.
Special appearance by Tom Waits.
At the beginning of the movie, when Callahan is in his Hawaiian shirt and he's drinking on the beach and he's just having a good time, man, did you get a feeling of Inherent Vice?
I didn't see Inherent Vice. I do remember the trailers, and so yeah, the Hawaiian shirt, the drinking, the long hair, yeah, I can totally see that.
It's a long movie. They could cut some stuff out, but I would recommend it.
Was that a PTA movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
On to our final segment, TLDL, Too Long, Didn't Listen. I'm going to ask you a few questions about these two movies, just to wrap up the show. Who gives a stronger performance, Ryan Gosling or Joaquin Phoenix?
I'm gonna give it to Ryan.
Which movie has better pacing?
Don't worry.
Which movie is going to make a viewer more uncomfortable?
I'm gonna say don't worry.
Which film has better cry moments?
Don't worry.
Which movie is better to watch with your significant other?
I'm gonna say Lars.
Which movie has a stronger supporting cast?
Lars.
Which movie has the more uplifting ending?
Don't worry.
And is there any final bit of business you want to mention about either of these movies?
They both have nice uplifting endings, and I think they're both under 2 hours, which is nice.
The trend of overly long movies, that probably started, 2010, 2015? So before Don't Worry.
You know who I blame is Christopher Nolan. I 100% blame him for the state of cinema as it is. Because Batman Begins was 2005, that was a 2.5 hour movie. Dark Knight was 2.5 hours. Although I love both of them, they're really good, but...
But they started the trend.
I think they started the trend, yeah.
All of his subsequent movies have just gotten longer and longer, haven't they?
Oppenheimer probably is his longest movie at this point, because that's 3 hours.
Oh my god.
It was a good movie. You feel those 3 hours. I wouldn't see it a second time.